The auxiliary police program at the time.
Josh, how are we doing?
We are all set to begin whenever you're ready.
Okay.
We're on the air.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got 10, so. Okay, very good, very good. Okay, good. We'll start this meeting of the 261st meeting of the Municipal Police Training Council. I'm Sheriff Ron Spike, the chairman of the council, and I welcome everyone here. And I would ask Dr. McBride to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'd remain standing for just a moment of silence, remembering all those that are related to public safety for all their service, and honor those that have lost their lives, and to think about all those in the military protecting our freedom. Thank you very much. Seated. Okay, which is customary that we like to do introductions to start out with. And I would first like to welcome the new Deputy Commissioner from DCJS, Michael Bonds, to this first meeting of the MPTC, and congratulations and welcome to you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Nice to see everybody. Nice to meet
Good to
everyone.
see you. And additionally, we have a new member on the council, Deborah Long, who is here, and welcome, Deborah.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll start with my left, and we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves. And Mike, or Bruce, go ahead.
Bruce McBride, Sunni Commissioner, retired.
John Muller, MTAPD Chief.
Hi, Maureen Curtis, Vice President of Criminal Justice Programs at Safe Horizon.
Deputy Chief Michael Cassidy, NYPD.
As Sheriff said, Mike Bonds, DCJS.
Johanna Sullivan, DCJS.
Natasha Harbin Locklear, DCJS Legal.
Michael Puckett, DCJS.
Scott Neff, DCJS. Joshua Feinhout, DCJS.
Dee Medina, DCJS.
Colleen Blevins, DCJS.
Joe Popkin, also DCJS.
Opal Rivera, Docs.
Okay.
Deborah Long, Community Representative.
Well,
Steve Grapp, New York State Police.
okay, thank you. And now let's go down over here.
Molly Bates, DCJS.
Molly.
Hype Collado, Docs.
Okay.
Matt Brockbank, DCJS.
Frank Wade, DCJS.
Gabe Maruso, DCJS.
Okay.
Aaron Fiden, DCJS.
All right.
John Durr, New York State Police.
Okay, thank you.
John McElwain, New York State Police.
All right, thank you. And then over here.
Sarah Dean, DCJS.
Okay, hi, Sarah.
Kara Gordon, DCJS.
Okay.
Tom Mitchell, State Sheriff's Association.
Okay, Tom, thank you. All right, well, thank you all for being here, and our Commissioner Rosado could not.
Sheriff, we have somebody online.
We have that's right. Thank you for reminding me. Josh, who do we have on there? We have a few folks on there from New York City Police Department, as I understand it.
Correct, we have a couple folks from New York City Police Department. If they could introduce themselves first.
Hi, Deputy Chief Peter Fortune from the Training Bureau, Commanding Officer of the Police Academy.
Hi, Tanya Meisenholder. I'm a senior advisor in the NYPD Training Bureau.
Is that it from NYPD?
I think Tim's on there.
I believe so.
Just those two. Okay. Do we have some council members that are also remote and identify yourselves?
Chief Tim Parisi, Ilion PD, representing New York State Association of Chiefs.
Okay. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
Harold Toulon Jr., Suffolk County Sheriff, member.
Okay. Good morning, Sheriff. And who else? That's it?
That should be it.
Okay, very good. Well, it looks like we've got 10 members of the council, which is kind of a first for us. So we welcome everybody. Commissioner Rosado could not be with us this morning, but First Deputy Commissioner Joe Popcorn is here. Joe, you want to make some remarks?
Sure. Thank you so much, Chairman. And I would echo welcoming Mike Bonds as the new Deputy Commissioner for our Office of Public Safety and extend all of our best wishes for his success in this role, and also to thank Johanna Sullivan for all of the service over the last year between MPTC, LEAC, the registry. The work is ever changing and always important, so thank you. I'm just going to share brief remarks that are a little bit of a preview of what the governor's proposed for DCJS over the coming year. So last year we marked our 50th anniversary. As a multifunction criminal justice support agency, we continue to evolve with the changes and meet the challenges in the criminal justice system. And so for a second year, the governor's proposed budget provides DCJS with the ability to positively impact both the criminal justice system and communities across New York. The budget, which is being negotiated now, provides an additional $100 million to support law enforcement agencies and community-based organizations with evidence-informed programs to better address crime, its causes, and consequences. Specifically, to further reduce gun violence and curb the recent rise in crime, DCJS is doubling down on the programs at work. We're doubling funding for alternatives to incarceration from $31.4 million and continuing to provide $20 million for pretrial services to close the system's revolving door. We're doubling funding for the GIVE initiative to $36.4 million and expanding the CAC network to New York City. We're quadrupling funding for aid to prosecution to $52.5 million and providing $40 million for discovery implementation. We're funding local law enforcement efforts to prevent the flow of illegal fentanyl and other opiates, illegal opioids, and investigating overdose deaths with $9 million. We're also tripling funding for the county reentry task forces to $11.5 million and continuing our capital investments to secure communities against hate crimes and secure reproductive health centers. So not a lot going on, but between last year and this year, our agency's budget will have more than doubled, and that's based in part to the governor's and the commissioner's leadership. And our job is to get the dollars out the door and to make sure they go to programs that work. We look forward to sharing more about these investments and building upon our solutions to keep our neighborhoods safe. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you for those remarks. Appreciate it. We have an agenda before us that requires us to do an adoption of that agenda. There's 4 items that require some action on the part of the council, and there's a couple of items that are for informational purposes. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda that's before us.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, then the adoption of the agenda is approved. And now we move to the minutes of the 260th meeting that was sent out to you from DCJS earlier. And if there are no corrections or amendments, I would entertain a motion that we approve those minutes.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the minutes. Second?
Second.
I have a second.
Second.
Chief Gaspy, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approve, opposed, same? Okay. I got eyes on the video too, okay? All right, the minutes are approved from the 260th meeting, and thank you. The first item on the agenda for discussion and action this morning is juvenile law and procedures. It's the online training program that OPS has been working on behalf of the council. Joshua, if you want to go ahead with that.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. And good morning to the members of the council. I've been speaking about this for the past couple meetings now. DCJS has done numerous things to accomplish the requirements that were part of the amended executive law under the council's duties and responsibilities. Particularly, Executive Law 840 was amended to require, first of all, that the council develop a mandatory reporting of child abuse and neglect model policy. As you recall from the last meeting, the council adopted that model policy. It was passed unanimously, and it has since been distributed and disseminated to law enforcement agencies across the state. In addition to that, the executive law also required training for officers on mandatory reporting of child abuse or neglect. And as part of that passage of the model policy, you may recall that there was a training specifically from the Office of Children and Family Services that was developed and available for law enforcement to complete that mandatory required training for all mandated reporters. So that met an additional, I guess, check for the executive law requirements. And the one that was still remaining, that was still outstanding, was to establish a training for officers pertaining specifically to the laws of juveniles, to more specifically include that new definition of a juvenile delinquent in the differential response program that we have spoken about during the past couple of meetings. So at the last meeting, I advised the council that we were working on developing that online training to make available to law enforcement. As you are aware, the new definition of a juvenile delinquent took effect at the end of December. We were able to roll out that online training to law enforcement before that law took effect to advise them of the change in new definition of juvenile delinquency, as well as advise them of the differential response program that is available for children under the age of 12 who otherwise, if they committed a specific offense, that would have gone to family court. Otherwise, now they are to be referred to their local district social services to provide them the resources, tools, as well as the family to support the child and keep them out of the criminal justice system. So we rolled out that training before that law took effect. And what we'd like to do now is I shared with the council members a link to that training. I could certainly ask if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But what we'd like to propose is the council to adopt that online training, which approximately takes about 1 hour if you went through that training to complete. And it gives really a high-level overview of handling youth from ages 7 through 17. Specifically, it covers the pre-arraignment procedures from 7 to 17, regarding holding location when the youth is detained, what are fingerprintable offenses for the youth, the parental notification process involved, where if a youth is to be questioned, where they're to be questioned, the specific location that has to occur in, the requirement to video record any questioning of youth, and the requirement to administer Miranda rights to the youth and to the parents, and also the court of arraignment, where the youth is to be arraigned. So we did a high-level overview of those specific pre-arraignment procedures for youth 7 through 17. And then what we also provided were definitions and to help further explain the difference between an adolescent offender, a juvenile delinquent, a juvenile offender. And then we specifically also spoke about, as the statute requires, the process for a differential response program. We included in there the reform for law enforcement to use that form to make that referral to their local social services. That form was developed in conjunction with Office of Children and Family Services. Within that form, there is a drop-down menu that allows an agency to find and locate their point of contact for local social services to make that referral if they come in contact with a child under the age of 12 who commits a certain misdemeanor or felony offense. And in addition to that, we also included charts within the training that can be downloaded and accessed that summarize essentially the 3 learning objectives. It gives you a breakdown of all the pre-arraignment processes, procedures for ages 7 through 17. It breaks down the differences between an adolescent offender, juvenile offender, and juvenile delinquent. And then also, as I mentioned, in that online training, there's also the differential response referral form that can be downloaded and accessed for law enforcement as well. The 3 learning objectives is essentially just what I covered, that's what the training covers. So before we go any further and move to a motion, I'd certainly entertain any questions that you may have regarding the training. At this point, Approximately 3,000 officers have completed the training, police and peace officers. And what we'd like to do is those officers who have already completed the training, and if the council adopts this training as meeting the minimum standard per the statute, we would like to grandfather those individuals in who have already completed the training to have on their state training record a reflection that they completed the training for issuance of an MPTC training certificate. So I'll pause there for questions.
Does any council member have any questions for Josh? Concerns?
Good morning, Josh. Do we have any reaction or summaries from the field for those who have taken the training?
I've gotten quite a bit of positive feedback where their training officers have taken the program and then said they want to train the rest of their officers in utilizing it. So I've gotten feedback in that manner. I haven't received anything negative, but I think, again, it's another tool in the toolbox, and specifically, it's juvenile law can be complicated. I think the training does a pretty decent job of distilling it down to make it easily digestible.
Right. I thought the course was very well put together. Was there a panel that helped on this, or was this outsourced? How did we get?
It's a culmination of years of raise the age work that has, that our agency has been involved in. In addition, it was a collaborative experience with Office of Children and Family Services, OPCA, and other key stakeholders that I was involved with multiple phone calls regarding the development of the differential response program, the guidance that was being issued to law enforcement.
Okay. I thought the resources in the upper right corner were also helpful. It's kind of like Cliff Notes.
Right.
But no, well done.
If I could just add, our media team, who, Josh and his team pulled together, they do a phenomenal job. And I think the way that they outlined it and put it together really helped it to be, as Josh said, very digestible. So they've been a great asset to us, that team.
But
they were excellent and guiding me. Because if the voice, the narrator, may sound a little bit familiar, but yeah, they're excellent in creating the graphics and helping us present the material in a way that's easily seen and digestible, as I mentioned.
Okay. Any other concerns? Any concerns from anyone remotely? Okay, not hearing any. I will say that my folks my members have done this online training. We had a case just last week with an 11-year-old who made a social media threat against the school, and it turned out to be a serious issue, but obviously, previously to the law change of under age 12, we would have petitioned a family court, but we had to get DSS involved to handle the matter because of the age. But the training was appreciated.
That's good timing then. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. All right, before we do the motions, Natasha, sometimes we can do multiple motions. Do you see these as being able to be done at the same time, or do you want them done separately?
Separately, please.
You want them done separately, okay. Good legal advice. I always listen to her. Always listen to her too. We kid about that, but she keeps me out of trouble. I would say to the council members, just a reminder that the motions are laid out in specific language, and I would ask that if you're going to make a motion that you actually read the specific language that's in the action item information, and that we read it word for word, and then we'll vote from there. So there is, I would entertain a motion. Go ahead, Maureen, on motion number 1.
Identify the pre-arraignment processing procedures of youths who commit an offense. Oh, sorry. Adopt the juvenile law and procedure online training as the minimum training standard pursuant to Executive Law 840 requirements.
Okay, there's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion on motion 1? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion 1 is approved. And Maureen, you want to go ahead with motion number 2?
Sure, especially since I messed up on motion number 1. Motion number 2, issue NPTC certificates to police and peace officers who have already completed the juvenile law and procedures online training.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Opposed, same? Okay, hearing none, then motion number 2 is approved as well. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Maureen. I think we're all set with that. Okay, the next item is the in-person death notifications model policy, training and regulations. Again, Section 840 of the executive law was amended that called for this particular model policy to be developed. Who do we have speaking on? Scott. Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, council members. As stated, New York Executive Law 840 Subdivision 7 required the council to develop a model policy, training to go along with that policy, and also development of regulations. I will speak to the policy and the training, and Josh will address the regulatory portion of this. We assembled a panel represented the State Training Directors Association, NYPD, New York State Association is the chief, New York State Office of Victim Services, New York State Police, the New York State Sheriff's Association, New York State University Police, and the Niagara University Law Enforcement Disability Awareness Training. The model policy we've developed is consistent with the 4-step notification process of planning, preparing, delivering, and following up on in-person death notification. It's also consistent with the content of the basic course for police death notification instruction, which was added to the basic course for police officers in June of 2019. Additionally, consistent with the FBI and Penn State joint online training, we regret to inform you, the 34-component online training that can be completed in about an hour. Also consistent with the ICP concept and issues paper on death notifications and the best practice guidance provided by our stakeholders. The key areas covered by the policy are planning, preparing, delivering, and the post-notification follow-up. Also, special considerations involving children, persons with disabilities, or other adults as the infirmed, language barriers, the challenges of social media and time issues, mass casualty events, workplace and business notifications, and criminal investigations. In training, personnel assigned to receive training on agency procedures and a periodic training. The periodic training period that we established, and we had full agreement from our panel members, was once every 3 years for an interval. The recruit officer training, as stated previously, added to the BCPO in June of 2019, and in-service training curriculum are consistent with each other. Learning objectives of the training summarize your agency's in-person death notification policies and procedures. Second, to identify and explain the 4 steps of the in-person death notification process. And as mentioned, this can all be supported by the web-based training developed by the FBI and Penn State, currently hosted by Penn State University under the title, We Regret to Inform You.
The third portion of the Executive Law 840. So Executive Law 840 required the council, first of all, to develop an in-person death notification model policy. And we'll, once we conclude here with the presentation, we'll open up the room for questions and discussion about the model policy specifically. The second portion of the executive law required the council to develop training specifically for new police officers and current police officers. The new police officers, as Scott mentioned, that training component was done back in June of 2019 and added to the basic course for police officers. For current officers, we developed, and I shared with the council, an in-service instructor guide that essentially would ensure that agencies first inform their personnel assigned to deliver death notifications of their agency's policies and procedures on death notifications. If they don't have death notification policy and procedures in place, obviously the MPTC model policy could be used to guide to either develop their policy, be used as the policy, or for agencies that may have a death notification policy in place, they could use that as reference to potentially enhance or make amendments to their current death notification policy. The second component of that training is, first of all, inform the officer becomes informed of the policy and procedures. The second component is to then train the officers on the best practice standard of delivering the in-person death notification policy, as Scott stated, that the four components, the essential four components of delivering a death notification. And that Penn State training developed by the FBI mirrors pretty much to a T the MPTC proposed model policy as a best practice. And so that would be certainly a training tool that agencies can use as part of this in-service training package to utilize to train their officers going a step beyond just their policies and procedures, but also to train on how to deliver a death notification. There's some scenarios in there as well, if you haven't had an opportunity to take a look at it, that can be utilized as the officer goes through that training. And as Scott said, it takes approximately about an hour to complete. And it's a good complement to having policies and procedures in place. The third component of the statute requires the council to develop regulations requiring new recruit officers and current police officers to receive training on in-person death notification procedures. And in addition, it requires a periodic retraining component for current police officers. So we already did the easy one the council did back in 2019 for the basic course level. So essentially what we're proposing is to recommend to the governor an amendment to NYCR 6020.3, which are the minimum standards for the basic course for police. And essentially what we're doing is we're putting a regulatory language in there requiring that the basic course have in-person death notification training component and that new recruit officers receive that. Again, like as I mentioned, it was already a minimum standard in the basic course. We're now just essentially following the statute requirements of it to require it as regulatory language, stating that the BCPO will have this training in there, and new recruit officers will receive the training on in-person death notifications. So that would amend 6020.3, which are the minimum standards for basic course for police officers. And in your package, you'll see it's subdivision F, the underlined portion of it, that if you had the color copy, it would be in red. If you have the copy in front of you, it's kind of in a grayed out, but it's underlined under F. Now, to also comply with the statute and recommending rules and regs to the governor in regards to in-person death notification, it would also require the council to make a recommendation to amend 6022.3, which are the minimum standards for police in-service courses. And this component essentially mirrors the same language as the minimum standards for the basic course for police that we're proposing. However, it also has in there the periodic retraining of police officers. So it reads, training and periodic retraining of police officers assigned to handle in-person death notifications to a deceased individual next of kin shall be conducted in accordance with the policies and procedures and minimum standards as established by the council. Now, the policies and procedures are obviously the MPTC model policy. The minimum standards established by the council would be the in-service training guide that would be provided to agencies. Now, within the policy, the recommendation is personnel assigned to conduct and deliver death notifications would be retrained every 3 years as a recommendation. And that mirrors what the statute requires, is for the council to issue a recommendation on periodic retraining. So in the model policy, you will see verbiage that says a recommendation of 3 years of periodic retraining for individuals assigned to deliver death notifications.
So you're saying recommendation, not required?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So that is a high-level overview of the model policy, the training, and I know we sent both the model policy in advance, the training curriculum in advance, and this is an overview of the proposed regulations. There is enough for a quorum to make a recommendation to the governor with the regulations, but I'll pause there, and then we can certainly entertain any questions in regards to any three of these components.
Just one clarification, is this 1.5 hours of training that's required?
Yes, so the proposed in-service training curriculum is recommendation of 1.5 hours of minimum training, which would again include an overview, informing the officer of the agency's policies and procedures and death notifications, and completion of the online training.
Okay, all right. And you had a collaboration of agencies and associations that were involved in helping put this together as well?
Yes, at the very, just like any other model policy work, Chiefs Association, Sheriff Association, NYPD, State Police.
NYPD was involved too. Okay. Very good. All right, any questions or concerns for Josh?
So there is an online component for this training?
Yes. It's, again, it was developed by the FBI, and it's hosted currently by Penn State University.
Okay.
And the FBI is actually going to be updating that training at a certain time frame where, and they've also
They talked about training effort.
they also agreed to assist us with doing executive level training on in-person death notifications in the future too. They'll be doing a couple course deliveries here in New York State, and we'll collaborate with them to make that available at the executive level as well.
So that would be applicable to the in-service training?
Correct.
They've done a series of in-house trainings with an in-person version of what's currently online throughout the Bureau. Now they've decided that it's time to take that out on the road for state and municipal agencies. They've not done so yet. I contacted the FBI to get permission to reference and recommend the online training as part of this project. And that's when they told me they're currently involved in a rewrite of the online training that is due to be out April of 2024. It's going to slightly change in the manner that it's not solely going to address death notification at that point. It's going to be more the delivery of traumatic news. So it would include death notification, serious injury, possible death, sexual assault, abductions, things along those lines. But as far as the executive level training that we'll be able to pilot, that will be along the lines of what is currently online and available today on the specific topic of death notification.
Okay.
So the reality is that since many of our departments are 20, 25 or less, everybody's going to have to, I mean, not too many people have the luxury of having a specialist, so everybody's going to have to take this. So, thank you.
I think the convenience of having the component online essentially will help the smaller departments to meet that standard. And obviously being informed of your own department's policies and procedures is critical as well.
If you're an accredited agency through New York, would this be mandatory? Or would this be part of the in-service component?
I cannot answer that question. I think we have someone from accreditation here, actually.
Dave's just making notes back there.
In service,
Yeah.
Our meeting will be tomorrow, our council meeting, and we will be discussing this matter.
Okay.
So we'll certainly keep you posted on that.
Okay. I would just say it would make sense to do so. I mean, since
Yes, sir.
accreditation. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns?
I do have a question. Good morning. I have a question about the section that references the language barrier, and I know that the pre-notification process part of it is identifying if the next of kin has that issue. I'm just wondering, is there some type of safety net or provision in the event that that has not been identified and these persons go to make the notification, and there is a language barrier existing and they don't have anybody from the local university or the immigration office with them? Is there a provision?
You mean like they get there in person and then discover there's a language issue?
Correct.
Yeah, I recommend using the language line.
Okay, that's what my question was, the language and language access line.
Well, I think a lot of agencies have procedures in place for language barrier issues. And we would recommend that they use those procedures that they have in place.
Okay.
If they encounter an issue like that. It's certainly difficult to try to account for any and all things that you may run into.
I saw that it's part of the pre-notification process that they
Yeah.
try to identify a language barrier, and I see that the training has that, they would, use somebody from a local immigration office, et cetera, but I also know that everything doesn't always go as planned, so I didn't see like a safety net in here in the event of, so.
And to go along with your question, and the resources that are available at the end of the online training, they have a brochure to give to the families that is available, I believe, in 11 different languages.
Okay.
That's an excellent question, Hopel. That comes up quite often, that where you need an interpreter, and they're not always available for a particular language. So it's a legitimate concern. Any other questions or concerns? Anyone remotely have any concerns about the policy or the training? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, that's okay. I just have a quick question. And I know you mentioned this, but in terms of the organizations that were part of the creation, were there any local or any community-based organizations working with, victims of trauma, excuse me, or crash victims who, could speak to the trauma that the family would be experiencing upon hearing this news? And if not, would that be something that, as you're looking to expand this to include sexual assault victims and those who have not died but have been seriously injured?
So the statute, first of all, required the council specifically to develop a death notification policy, and it seriously injured and serious illness and other things like that would exceed the scope of what the statute requires.
Right.
But we did work with Office of Victim Services, who was a collaborative partner with us as the voice of victims who may have unfortunately been on the receiving end of a death notification. We worked with them and they reviewed the policy and provided us any feedback in regards to the policy as a victim representative.
It's definitely something we can keep in mind. Obviously, you can hear that the FBI is thinking about that too as we move forward and as it continues on, that expanding the training and experience.
Right.
I think is definitely a good idea for us to keep in mind.
Because I know there are organizations that work with surviving family members, and they work closely with the detectives, whoever's notifying the family, or ongoing with the local law enforcement, as well as organizations that work with victims of crashes.
Yeah. And I think that the policy definitely addresses trying to make sure you have somebody there to help support them. And I think that definitely we're aware of that. So thank you.
I'll say I love the idea about the peer component of this, because this is, talking to Dr. McBride, this is one of the worst things cops can do. And there's a lot of trauma there just by internalizing, because you think about, you're making a notification about a child who's passed and you're a parent, or, everybody relates to these things. So to have that built in, I'm seeing this more and more, where we're making sure we're leveraging our peer teams to make sure that our officers are okay. Really good stuff.
Thank you. Can I just say something on a personal note? Thank you for saying that. So I had a son who was a victim of a homicide, and very familiar with my police department. And it took them 6 hours to find somebody to be able to come and tell me, because of the trauma just related to the personal relationship. So it's key, and I just wanted to share it because it was 8 hours after he had been pronounced that I actually found out or was informed, because of the relationship, and they didn't know how I was going to respond, just having that relationship with them. So that's key. I was going to bring something up like that. So I think this is important, especially that peer-to-peer interaction.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other concerns or comments? Anyone remotely? Okay, it looks like we're ready to go ahead with the motions. There's 3 motions, and I would seek a council member to proceed.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dr. McBride. Motion, we'll do one at a time.
My cheaters, huh? Motion number one, approve and disseminate to law enforcement the Municipal Police Training Council in-person death notification model policy as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, hearing none. Motion number one is approved. Motion number two.
Motion number two, adopt the hour and a half in-service, in-person death notification training curriculum as presented as the minimum standard of training for all current police officers.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Aye.
Okay. Motion number two is approved.
Motion number three, approve and recommend to the governor the proposed amendments to New York Codes, Rules and Regulations, Section 6020.3 and 6022.3.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Same. Okay, motion number three is approved as well. And thank you, Scott and Josh, for that presentation. The next item up for action is the firearm safety guidelines curriculum. It's an update to the curriculum that we've already passed. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the council. It's an update to curricula affected by the curriculum that was approved last time, I would say, is kind of what we're looking to do, is just ensure consistency throughout the programs. I'm going to acknowledge right now that there's some dogma attached to this particular issue, but it's never been a problem in my eyes to take a look at some of those things. You'll recall a gentleman by the name of Dustin Solomon was involved in the development of the basic course curriculum, providing us guidance and understanding the way the brain acquires information that is used later on in different circumstances. And initially, the reason we actually reached out to Dustin in the first place and made that connection was because of his discussion of the inapplicability of the current kind of firearm safety structure as it relates to police training and operational safety with respect to firearms, as opposed to kind of what we traditionally think about is on the range. Instead of his pitch here is this, instead of looking at one safety structure on the range and in the training environment, and then taking the trainee that's been exposed to that and trained within that environment and putting them in a place where that does not work, why don't we just start where we wanted to end in the first place and use the safety structure that works both on the range and in the real world. And that's kind of the pitch that we thought was well made, and a lot of firearms instructors in New York State, and certainly some of the progressive ones, have been using these firearms safety rules and recommendation structure for a number of years now. So the way it works is different from the previous structure where you have 4 rules that we break all the time. We condition people to break them all the time. We have 2 rules. These are never broken, ever, under any circumstances, in any environment. Know where your muzzle is pointed, point it there intentionally. That works on the range. It works operationally. It works on the second floor of an occupied apartment building. It works in a school. It works when you're cleaning your firearm. It works all the time. Never broken. Rule number 2, keep your trigger finger off the trigger unless intending or willing to press it. Again, this is operationally relevant and works all the time. Cleaning your gun in a school, on the range, all the time. Firearm safety recommendations. I'd love to come up with a different word than recommendation because it makes it sound optional, right? And that's not what we're trying to convey here. And that's part of the training when we deliver this. These aren't optional, right? This is not something that we're saying if you so choose. These are optional because sometimes they have to be broken. They have to be broken because they're administratively necessary. For instance, cleaning a firearm. A lot of modern police duty handguns require a trigger to be pulled to disassemble the firearm. That would be a situation where one of these recommendations would be broken. Checking the condition of your weapon. It's not optional to check the condition of your weapon, to know its condition. It's in certain circumstances, it's not practical to do so. And then, of course, the target and what's beyond it. It's not a recommendation. It's because it's not physiologically possible, right? And so these recommendations are this: check the condition of your weapon each and every time it is handled. Not optional. Each and every time it is handled, where practicable. Do not place your finger on the trigger unless the weapon is aligned on the target, and be sure of what is in front and behind of your target. Can't drive home enough, not optional. These are where practicable, where physiologically possible, where possible because of circumstance. One of the big, I think some of the big kind of sea changes in firearms training as of late is that traditionally on the range, what makes a good shooter is, and this, we talked about this during the firearms basic course curriculum update, is different than what makes a good decision maker and good shooter in the real world, right? And front sight focus being kind of the elephant in the room here. And we're moving away from that, but that very same front sight focus that works on the range makes it frankly impossible to see your target, the threat, what your target is doing, if your target is now not a threat, if there's the subject that you're interacting with is now not a threat. And then of course, multiple focal planes of vision beyond that person are not able to be seen with any degree of acuity. So we're not saying these are optional, we're just saying this is just physiologically what's possible. This safety structure affects the following courses, right? So it's been adopted to basic course for police officers. There's a trickle-down effect here. Now we have some inconsistencies between what's being offered in the basic course, what's being delivered at the firearms instructor course, the reality-based training instructor course, the SWAT operator course, and the patrol rifle operator course. So all we're asking is just to, in 3 cases, make those learning objectives consistent. And then in the case of the reality-based training instructor course, just advise you that there was no learning objective to be changed, but we did make consistent the content there. So I'll be more than happy to answer any questions to talk more about why, specifically the issues with kind of the old safety structure. I will say this: we're not saying they're relevant to police training, right? We're talking about only police training. We're not saying that private rangers should be adjusting the safety rules that they're using on the range. We're not saying hunter education should be changed to be consistent with this. We're saying operationally for police officers, for armed professionals, this is a safety structure that works in the context of training.
Okay. We're basically talking about new safety rules to what we've already have in place.
Yes, sir. And we have this range safety rule structure, right? And those are, again, we call them range safety rules for a reason. These are firearm safety rules, right? These are operationally relevant. If you're on a range, those range safety rules can still absolutely apply, and they can exist in concert with this new structure. Although I would say that our new structure doesn't have to be broken, whereas the old ones really do.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or concerns from anyone for Michael? Anyone remotely with any questions or concerns?
Just one question.
Yes, go ahead.
Do we ever circle back and look at this, say 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Obviously, these are all reportable offenses to DCJS when there's an accidental discharge, correct? So it makes its way up to DCJS?
I don't think that information would be collected outside of a use of force. It would be reportable use of force, but because the way that's defined, I would say the holes that you see in the cleaning areas in the police departments, those have not been reported.
Yeah, see, that's why I'm interested, because it's a good thing to gauge, and then to say we made these changes and we saw a 28% decrease.
Sure.
I mean, obviously we want to get to none, but it's sometimes not a bad idea to circle back and assess the changes you made and the impact it had on what we're trying to accomplish here, which is safe handling of firearms.
And I think your experience is probably similar to a lot of ours, is that you're familiar with tables with holes and roof ceilings with holes and things like that. Our focus on this new curriculum is really operational safety, because we want to have not have the experience where officers are all experienced now, is that my fellow officer pointed a gun at me and didn't really mean to, right? And we don't want that to happen. We want to give officers the tools to where that doesn't need to happen.
Yeah.
Operational safety is paramount. It's something that we've probably been ignoring for too long. Not just us, the profession.
Yeah, I think we get too much muscle memory, and then I remember years ago with the range, they would teach you to pick up your brass, and then they said there was actual incidents where cops would in the middle of something reach down and pick up because there's the muscle memory. So
yeah, and we've really tried to account for that in the new curriculum.
Yeah.
And we are looking as a whole at the firearms curriculum and evaluating it, and we've been having lots of conversations with that, because we know it's best, as you know from the previous presentation, based on research and evidence and best practice, but it's definitely an area, and it's gotten a lot of attention due to the fact that it has so much research behind it and support. So we'll continue.
Yeah, there's the amount of restraint is very impressive when you look at where we were in 1970 and 1980 and 1990, and the numbers just continue to go down and down. So.
How do you see the number of reality-based training instructors now? Are we doing better in that regard?
I think it ebbs and flows a little bit for the needs of the academies. The SPTC schedules for a year. As you know, when they schedule a course, they provide room and board for the attendees. In some cases, they do have to actually cancel courses because of a lack of interest. I think that has less to do with an actual need and more to do with just the information being out there. But we haven't had as much of a demand for reality-based training instructors, but still certainly regionally you see demand pop up.
Yep. Okay, any other questions or concerns?
From a big picture standpoint, I know that we're in the process of getting the instructors, new and veterans, to adopt these procedures and things of that nature, at least on the police side. And I know that we have the peace officer contingent that still needs this training. But one of the unknown questions that's still up there is the qualification. And I'm not asking you what's going to be the qualification, but do we have a timetable on?
We've had some proposals. We've had discussions with RAND Corporation. The way that we came into the RAND Corporation was because they were involved in an evaluation of the NYPD's firearms program in 2007, I believe it was. And so we reached out to a particular researcher that was involved in that process who still works for RAND. And so we're in conversations with them about a number of different things. I would say it's hard to pin down exactly the direction that we'll take. We want to make sure that whatever we're doing is a bona fide job qualification. Because historically qualification was just this thing that we did, but it doesn't really say that you're qualified to do anything one way or the other, right? It's hard to make the claim that it serves a true bona fide job qualification purpose. We want to make sure that whatever qualification we're doing now is an accurate measure of the training, number one, and there's also a bona fide job qualification so that potentially any disparate impact that is observed is, essentially necessary for the job.
Okay. So there's a plan in place?
There's a plan in place.
Yes. Yes, we're in the midst of ongoing conversations, as they've said. They've been talking with Rand and trying to figure out our direction forward, but we've been having lots of conversations about it, and we're definitely moving forward on that.
Well, I think the challenge is going to be not just at the academies, but for in-service requal. Some agencies do it twice, some a year, once a year, no time.
Ever? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another issue I know that we will address.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think we're ready for a motion. John, you want to do that?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Approve the amendments to the firearms instructor course, patrol rifle operator course, and SWAT operator course as read to reflect the new firearm safety rules and recommendations previously adopted by the MPTC at the December 2022 meeting for the basic course for police officers - firearms.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed, nay? Hearing none opposed, the motion is approved. And thank you for the presentation, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
All right, moving on to informational update. We're talking about the evaluation of existing MPTC courses. And Joshua, if you want to bring us up to date on that.
Sure, thank you, Chairman. As you can all see, this is the 261st meeting of the MPTC. So if my math is correct, and assuming the statute has always been meet quarterly at an annual basis, this would be going into the 66th year of the MPTC. So you can imagine there's been a lot of training curricula and standards and best practices adopted by the council over those many years that the council has been in existence. And as a staff arm to the council, the Office of Public Safety, which is us, as a staff arm to the council, I think we have a duty to take a look at all the curricula that the council has passed and the standards and all the materials that have been issued by the council over the decades, and to take a step back and look at it and determine One, its applicability and relevancy to 21st century policing. Is it in line with best practices? Is it a training curriculum is it still needed? How often is it utilized by police departments? And is there training curriculum that we need to maybe make a consideration to the council to say, hey, you know what, I think we might need to discontinue this as part of the list of various courses. There's nearly 100 MPTC courses that are approved at this point. Many of those are statutorily required, so obviously those courses, we would never make a recommendation to discontinue them, but we would look at them from a lens of, do they need to be updated? Are there best practices considerations we need to take a further look at? And truly, as we learn and understand more of the neuroscience of the brain, especially with the project we just completed for the recruit firearms curriculum and the ongoing project of it, we're learning more and more on how the brain learns and how to structure training curriculum to ensure that there's a long-term retention of the information, whether it be knowledge or skill, that's part of the training curriculum. So what I'd like to do is, and this is it's a fairly large project, but to take a look at all 100 of these courses. And we've been brainstorming already on an objective way to measurably rate the courses and come up with almost a rating scale to make a recommendation to the council on what we find for each of the courses, and present a complete package to the council to identify, what are courses that we may need to consider to discontinue, what are courses that we would like to potentially prioritize staff resources in updating, revising, taking a fresh look at it. So it hasn't been done in quite a while, and I think it needs to be done. I think we owe law enforcement that service to ensure that any training curriculum that is being issued by the council remains current and is up to date. The council has made huge strides in contemporary policing issues and tackled a lot of issues over the past decade. And we want to make sure that we continue to push forward as being a leader in those issues and ensuring that all training curriculum is current and up to date, and is, quite frankly, it's needed, it's relevant to today. There's no sense of using staff resources to maintain a curriculum that no longer really truly has relevancy in 21st century policing. So I don't guarantee that we'll have any recommendations for June. It's a fairly large project, but we're going to start working on it if the council feels that that's a good path to take. And then we would certainly come back with recommendations to the council, and we can discuss from there. And that will give us some direction too as a staff with resources that are available to determine what needs to be updated, reviewed, or discontinued for that matter.
Do you see a collaboration with associations and major agencies and that, or academy directors?
Certainly. I mean, one of the criterion we'll look at too is the frequency of the courses being run by the academies, the need for the course, the content, whether it's still relevant and applicable. Have academies gone beyond those minimum standards, and what have they been as we take a look at the various courses? Certainly, there's going to have to be a collaboration. We certainly can't do it in a vacuum.
Yeah. Any other questions or concerns from?
Do we maintain a course catalog of sorts? I mean, how many courses are we talking about in terms of on the books already?
97 to be exact. Well, 98 now, the juvenile law procedure. So
99 after today.
Yeah, it's quite a few.
Yeah, and we have it through ACADIS. Now that we've moved to the ACADIS structure, while it may not be like, we have an ability to query our courses in a much better way and be able to run reports and things like that. It's much more user-friendly to us, that structure.
Out of that 98, would you say how many of them are required within the basic?
Well, there's quite a few courses that are required in order to teach components of the basic course. There's specialized instructor courses.
Right.
I wouldn't. No, I would just be shooting.
Yeah. Okay.
Giving a ballpark number, and I don't know until we really take a deeper look at it, but there's quite a few courses that support the basic course.
I mean, some of the higher liability issues we have to look at on a regular, more, like use of force and high-speed chases and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the rubrics that you talked about, frequency,
I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but we lost the feed and cannot see anything occurring in Albany.
to participate in proceedings via video conference in real time where public comment or participation is authorized, and shall ensure that video conferencing authorizes the same public participation or testimony as in-person participation or testimony. And whereas, per the Committee on Open Government, public bodies are still permitted to conduct these meetings at multiple physical locations from which members of the body may participate if those locations are open to in-person public attendance, regardless of extraordinary circumstances. The intent of the amendments to the Open Meetings Law was to expand the authority of a public body to allow its members to participate in a meeting video conferencing under limited circumstances when the member's location is not open to in-person public attendance. It was not the intent to limit the existing authority to virtually connect multiple public locations from which members and the public may attend through the use of video conferencing technology. Therefore, be it resolved that the council authorizes its members to experience an extraordinary circumstance as described above and further defined by any rules or written procedures later adopted to attend meetings by video conference as long as a quorum of the members attend in person at one or more locations open to the public, and as long as a member can be seen, heard, and identified while the meeting is being conducted and as otherwise permitted under Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022, and be it further resolved that the council should create written procedures further governing its use of video conferencing by its members in compliance with Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022, which shall be incorporated into its bylaws. Okay, that's a mouthful. Any questions by the council members before I open up officially for the public hearing?
No, I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
Okay. Okay, so pursuant to Chapter 56 of the laws of 22, the council hereby commences a public hearing to hear all interested parties and citizens regarding the adoption of proposed resolution number 1 of 2023 and related procedures pertaining to the authorization of members of the council to attend meetings by video conferencing under extraordinary circumstances. I don't know if we have any members of the public here today to speak. Doesn't look like it. Josh, I don't know if we received any written comments. I don't believe we have.
I did not. I don't believe we received any comments prior to the meeting that I'm aware of.
This is great news. So.
And
obviously, we always welcome public comments. That's what I meant.
I don't believe, do we have any public comments here today?
No, and just for the record, we did follow all the normal open meetings laws, post it so that those in the public would know and have the opportunity, all that.
Yes, everything was posted online.
Yes.
Email addresses were provided, but nothing was received. But on the off chance something got lost in the mail or something like that, I would double check to make sure. But as of right now, we have no written testimony or oral testimony. So,
There being no public comments, then I would proceed to make a motion to adopt the MPTC video conferencing resolution and procedures and proposed amendments to the MPTC bylaws. And I would entertain a second to that motion. A second by Chief Cassidy. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Remotely, is it an aye for you as well?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Same? Okay, hearing none opposed, and it looks like that motion is approved. And thank you, Natasha. Okay.
Chairman?
Yes.
We did lose audio for a short time period when I was presenting on informational item number 1. So I'm not sure if any of the council members who are participating remotely have any questions in regard to information item 1. I know when you asked, there was no response, but it might have been because they couldn't hear you.
Yep. All right. There was nothing here presently, so Chief Parisi or Sheriff Toulon, regarding information item number 1 on the evaluation of existing MPTC courses, do you have any concerns or questions or comments?
No, I do not.
Okay, thanks, Sheriff.
Neither do I, Chairman. Neither do I.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. Okay, thanks, Josh. Sorry. Does any council member have any new business they would like to bring before the council? All right, hearing none, I would say that our next meeting will be June 7th, 2023. Guess I better say that as well. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved, second?
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye. Opposed, same. Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for attending and all the new members and new deputy commissioner, and have safe travels. Stay safe. Thank you all.
Thank you.